Have you ever considered that there might be things that you are doing that are burning your team out? Very often we think about our own burnout or our own exhaustion when it comes to what it takes to be a leader. And I recently spoke to actually one of the listeners from the show, and she was saying that she feels like she's just fighting fires the whole time. And something that I mentioned to her was that is leadership and that is part of leadership. And sometimes that can really, really exhaust us. And we just feel like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make it through this period? However, there might actually be things that you are doing that are pushing your team to burnout. So in this episode, I'll be discussing 5 of the leadership mistakes that push your team to burnout and how you can avoid them. Let's do it. Leading as a woman is tough, but leading as a woman of faith is next level. However, it doesn't have to be that way. God has called you into this leadership role because He says you are worthy. You are His child, and if He qualifies you, who in this world can unqualify you? You might suffer from imposter syndrome and believe you're not good enough, but God says you are good enough. Hi, I'm Rika, Whelan, Christian leader and workplace culture coach, and together we're going to navigate leadership with faith as our foundation. Let's get started. Grab your coffee or water, keep that notebook and pen handy, and let's jumpstart your leadership. Now, there's a difference between things that leaders do and things that industries or organizations cause. Sometimes in an organization, there's no two ways about it. There are things that you have to do according to an SOP, according to a policy or a procedure that is unrealistic, because sometimes those policies and procedures are unrealistic and they're created by people who haven't been in the job for a very, very long time. And that is an episode that I'm going to be talking about next week. I'm going to be discussing how to review SOPs and policies and procedures and how you as a leader can have input in them if you don't. Okay, so look forward to that episode next week with you. But I digress. So let's talk about this week's topic, which is, the fact that sometimes we don't have the control over what our organization asks of us. And sometimes those requests or those things that we have to do are unrealistic because, again, like I said, sometimes the people who set those expectations haven't actually been in the job for a while. But also post-COVID, things are different because things couldn't stay the same as pre-COVID, because it's as if the world had this viewpoint, it all of a sudden got this viewpoint of, oh wow, okay, we can work from home, or we need to do things differently because we were not prepared for COVID, or, if something like this ever happens again. So yeah, definitely things have been tougher from conversations that I've had with people, and budgets have been tighter because everyone was really affected by COVID, and so budgets have been more tight. Therefore, it means that's got a flow-on effect of not employing enough staff or more staff than required, just being on the bare minimum. And expenditures have therefore been low, which means that potentially your organization haven't been able to provide the appropriate resources. So these are all things that can be caused by an organization that can really, really, lead to some frustration in the workplace from the workers and from employees and even for yourself. Now, as a leader, you do have control over a couple of things, okay? You do have control. And so this is what I want to talk to you about today, is what are those 5 things? Look, there's probably more, but I decided to focus on 5 today. What are 5 things that you as a leader have control over to ensure that your team does not burn out? Okay, so the number 1 thing is overloading workloads. Okay, so the mistake that I see and that I hear people talk about all the time is excessive tasks or unrealistic deadlines. So often, leaders, especially if you're a middle manager, which a lot of people are, then you are in the middle. You've got expectations from the top, from the executive team, that things need to get done. And that means that sometimes you might have to delegate some of those tasks because you can't get to everything. I love delegation. Delegation is great. However, if delegation becomes unrealistic, then it's going to be problematic for your team, because then they're going to know, oh no, Rika's attending her fortnightly leadership meeting. She's going to come back, and what expectations is she going to give us this week? And so, those sort of excessive tasks or unrealistic deadlines can really cause your team to feel frustrated and feel a sense of panic or anxiety, especially, let's say, for example, you need something done and it needs to be done within the hour, or it needs to be done within 6 hours, or it needs to be done tomorrow. However, just remember that your team might have planned out their day to look a certain way. And yes, although, those things can be left and reprioritized at a later time, the problem is that if the person who has these excessive tasks or unrealistic deadlines works directly with a client, then it's actually going to be the client that's going to be affected by it as well. So we need to consider the bigger picture when we are giving these excessive tasks or unrealistic deadlines. We need to consider that, okay, this is an unrealistic deadline. Maybe I need to go to my line manager and say, this is an unrealistic deadline, or is there any way that we can push this deadline with 24 hours or something like that? Now, something that really worked well for me was because I had a leadership team. Fortnightly, we had those leadership team meetings. So I built a really good relationship with my leadership team. And obviously, within the fortnight, I spoke to them and I saw them. And we spoke about other things. But I could always fall back on my leadership team and rely on them to get something done for me. However, I knew that I had to make sure that I needed to give them the resources and the time to be able to complete any tasks that they needed to do. If I didn't give them the time or the resources, I knew it was not going to get done. And then something additional that I found that worked really well is if you can do it as a team effort. So if there's something that needs to be done, sitting together and doing it as a team. So I had 2 team members that were solely for administration purposes. And for these, if we had something to get done and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get it done, they were very strong in admin as well. So the 2 of them would come to my office and we would sit and we would do it together. Same spreadsheet or same document, but we would get it done together, because then instead of me just giving it to them and setting this unrealistic expectation, I helped as well. So for you to avoid, giving or assigning excessive tasks for unrealistic deadlines, you're going to learn how to prioritize yourself, your tasks and everything that you have to do. If you are bad at time management, okay, you are not doing your team any favors. So because then literally 5 minutes or an hour or a day before something is due, you're going to remember that this thing is due, and then you're going to freak out. You're going to freak out your team. And although that adrenaline rush of getting that thing done within the 24 hours is fine, but long-term adrenaline rushes like that is really not good for your body. So learn how to prioritize your tasks, learn how to manage your time so that your team can learn from you as you role model it to them. And then just set realistic deadlines. Avoid rushing and ensuring that ample time is available for quality work. And like I said, give them the time and give them the resources. I would quite often pull my team away from customers or away from being forward facing or away from what they were doing and give them that, additional alone time to get the work done. So yeah, that is number 1. Okay, number 2, neglecting work-life balance. Okay, so again, this comes in with role modeling. Huge thing is if you neglect work-life balance in your own life, then you're probably going to discourage others from doing the same, whether it's intentional or not. Okay, we don't want to foster a culture of overwork. And I know in some industries, I'm actually busy with my master's degree at the moment, and one of my topics is retention. And one of the things that came out with my research is overwork and underpaid. So people are overworking themselves. They're working 5 to 10 to even 20 hours a week, without being paid for those additional hours. Because if they don't, they're not going to get through their work, and then they're going to get into trouble. They're going to get performance managed. However, the organization is also not willing to pay them that overtime because that's work that they were meant to do in their allocated 38 or 40 hours or whatever that might look like. So that is definitely not a good culture to foster that culture of overworking yourself and not being paid for it, because then people start feeling undervalued, and then work-life balance is just completely out of whack. So I've mentioned a lot on the show about the post-COVID feeling that people got, that there's more to life than just work. I need a proper work-life balance. I need to prioritize my family because they come first. And so you'll also see this with the new generation coming through, Gen Z, is that work is not their priority. And I am going to do an episode on working with Generation Z employees, Gen Zs, because they are really different. They are very different from anybody or any generation in the workforce that we've ever seen. And so we need to understand how to work with those people and how to not get frustrated with their work ethic. And so one big work ethic, or one big thing for them, for example, is work-life balance, because work doesn't come first. For most of us, doesn't matter in what generation you fall, but for us, we learned that a very good work ethic is focusing on your work and making sure that your work is done before you go home, or things like that. So, and myself, I know my work ethic. My work ethic is to overwork myself and to get everything done, because I don't like going home and then I know that all this amount of work awaits for me for tomorrow. However, I've had to prioritize and I've had to time manage. So I've also had to learn that it's okay if I leave work and then do it tomorrow. I don't need to come home and spend my family time on doing work stuff. And I used to burn the candle on both ends. I used to work until midnight, burning the midnight oil. I used to do that a lot. And I used to only sleep about 3 to 4 hours a night, because I would be at work for about 10 hours, maybe some days 12 hours. Then I would come home to my family. It would be dinner, bedtime, and then I would be back on my computer again working until midnight. I would go to bed and I'd be up again at 4 o'clock or maybe 5 o'clock at the latest to either get to work again or to do more work on my computer. And ultimately, what did that give me? And I'm now speaking from first-hand experience here, is all that gave me was burnout. I am battling burnout. And I feel exhausted all the time. There's a lot of other symptoms I'm experiencing as well. It's not only exhaustion, but exhaustion is the number one thing that I am battling with. And no matter the amount of time I sleep, no matter what, no matter how much I rest, no matter how easygoing I take my life, no matter what. It doesn't help that I'm finishing my master's degree and I've got a lot of work to do there. That does not help, but I'm nearly done. I am just exhausted all the time. And I'm thinking to myself, why did I do that? Why did I prioritize work? And why did I role modeled to my team a culture of overwork? I did that. And people used to get annoyed at me quite a lot, because we used to be on Microsoft Teams. And the thing is, with Microsoft Teams, if you post something, it goes live immediately. I don't know if Microsoft Teams now finally has a function that you can schedule. I know that you can schedule posts. I think so. Or it's not called a post. I'm just so out of it now. I can't remember. But you couldn't schedule comments. I think that was the one thing, because we had these threads in Microsoft Teams that I could schedule eventually. But underneath that thread, there needed to be certain information that needed to be sent to the team. And so couldn't schedule that ahead of time. So what I would do is sometimes I would be sending messages at midnight, 5 o'clock in the morning, or whatever, to just because I just needed to get it done. I was not going to have time when I get to work to send out those messages. My only other option was to create those messages on like a Word document and then copy and paste them into Teams when I get to work. But again, I wanted to save myself the time because I had other stuff to do. So in that sense, I was creating or fostering a culture of overwork because I was showing my team that it's normal to send Teams messages at 4 a.m. in the morning or at midnight. So that was a big mistake I made. And in a sense, I was kind of expecting people to respond to those, not at 4 o'clock in the morning, but throughout the day, I was expecting people to respond to that message, to acknowledge that they have read that. But the thing is, if you send a message at 4 a.m. in the morning, if somebody gets to work at 8 or 9, there would have been other threads or posts that have come through, and that one's gone missing. Luckily, Teams, you can scroll up and down, and they keep the threads, which is really lovely. It's not like a chat if you're on a chat. But it was people. Then I had to tag everyone again. Hey, just a reminder. Nobody's read this post or nobody's acknowledged it or whatever. So yeah, I was just really not doing the right thing. So what I would like to suggest to avoid this is basically do the opposite of what I just said I did. Encourage time off, okay? Promote vacations, sick leave, mental health days. Most companies have now introduced the 2-day mental health days, here in Australia anyway, where you are free to take 2 days, not consecutively, it can be 2 separate days, where you can take fully paid mental health day. So you can just call in sick in the morning and say, I'm having a mental health day. And that is something that most companies have now introduced. It's great, but 2 days is still not enough, right? So we're getting somewhere. At least it's a start. It's a start, okay? I always used to say to my team as well, before that was introduced anyway, I always used to say to them, if you call me and tell me that you can't make it in, tell me why. Tell me that you need a mental health day. Tell me that you're sick. Tell me that it's for an appointment. Because if I knew that, it meant that I could manage that. If somebody was having a week of mental health days, then that needs some follow-up. And then, yes, that's going to need a doctor's note after 3 days. And yes, that's going to need this and that, okay? Doctor's note being a medical certificate. And so, but if you're sick, again, after 3 days, you would need a medical note. But again, then you're just sick and you'll get better and you come back. So if it's for an appointment, then I can remind you that, okay, maybe next time try and make your appointment at this or this time. But that was really unrealistic because if somebody works 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, when are they meant to go for their appointments when the place is only open 9 to 5? So that was something that I was like, right, if you can make it at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, then you can come in late or leave early. But if it's in the middle of the day, maybe during your lunch break's good, because then you've got an hour to get to your appointment and back. But again, if the appointment's far away, what do? They're stuck. So yes, work-life balance. So just encourage it. Flexible working arrangements as much as possible. So I get that not everybody can work from home, but in terms of what I just mentioned with appointments, giving them the flexibility to say, okay, you can come in late that day because you've got an appointment. That's okay. And you can make up the hours later, or take annual leave, or, whatever that might look like. But offer them the ability to do that. And then lead by example, which was what I was not doing. Prioritize your own work-life balance. And ultimately, when I resigned that position, I said to everyone, and I cried when I said that, it was such a sad day for me to resign that position because I loved that leadership role. I absolutely loved that leadership role. It's one of my favorite places that I've ever worked. And I cried when I told people that, unfortunately, this job has just taken its toll on me because I want to be there for you guys. I want to give you everything and I want to make your job. I want to give you the resources. I want to make it as easy as possible. But unfortunately, because of that, it's taken its toll on me and it just is not sustainable anymore. And so I was very honest with my team in the fact that I wasn't prioritizing myself. I wasn't prioritizing my family. And for a full 5 years, my family had to play second fiddle. And that was also wrong. So I'm now making up for that lost time by working from home And sometimes I do work away from home. However, it's minimal. It's not the whole week. It's part-time. So, yeah, that was number 2, neglecting work-life balance. So number 3, let's get to number 3, poor communication. Okay, there's nothing worse than poor communication, guys. Okay, this is bad. If you don't communicate well with your team, it's going to lead to frustration, and it's going to lead to just really, really, really big thoughts and feelings that might lead to burnout in the end, okay? Burnout is physical, yes, but it's also very mental. It's also a very mental game. So if somebody comes to work and they're constantly frustrated because of a lack of communication, it can lead to other thoughts and feelings, and it can lead to a lack of productivity. It can lead to, kind of just that feeling like on a Sunday night, like, oh, I don't want to go to work tomorrow. So a true good workplace culture is the feeling that people get on a Sunday night before they have to go to work. So definitely, if you lack clear communication, inconsistent messaging, or avoiding difficult conversations, then I'd like to encourage you to improve your communication. And there is some episodes on the show about communication, so I'd like to encourage you to go and listen to them. The things that I want you to do is I want you to have open and honest communication with your team. Create a safe space for feedback and questions. Okay. Do regular check-ins. Have one-on-one meetings to address concerns and provide support. And then set clear expectations. Set clear goals and expectations to avoid misunderstandings. And so, this can be even that episode that I talked about, team meetings, episode number 83, how to lead a team effectively. I was talking about communicating with your team prior to the meeting and then setting the expectations of the meeting. So in everything that you do, please try to communicate well, but not just well, but a lot. Because I feel like sometimes leaders don't want to overdo it. They don't want to over communicate with their team. But the problem is that sometimes then that causes a lack of communication. And so if there's things like housekeeping that needs to be talked about, the same things over and over and over again, maybe send out a weekly email or a daily digest or something like that. That just set those clear expectations. Let them know what your expectation is of them as well, okay? And then please do not avoid having difficult conversations, okay? I know it's tough. I know it's tough to have difficult conversations, but you need to do them. It's part of leadership. Leadership is not easy. By no means is leadership easy, but it can be fun if you are doing it correctly. Okay. And, yes, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to think, oh, leadership is so hard. That day's not going to be fun for you. That's okay. We're not always going to have fun. However, leadership should give you this form of satisfaction. So when you've helped a team member, or if you've coached someone, or you've been working on them, mentoring them, and you can see the progress, that satisfaction that leadership gives you, you just can't get that anywhere else. Okay, number 4, micromanagement. Okay, excessive monitoring and control of team members' work. Okay, micromanagement is awful. Now, sometimes micromanagement is tricky because, yes, we do need to keep people accountable, but we don't need it to be excessive. Okay, so if your team has to let you know their every move and every single thing that they do, when they do it, any update that they've done, then that can be classed as micromanagement, and you're going to have to be careful about that. However, it is important that you keep your team accountable, and that they know that they're being kept accountable, and that not everything that they do doesn't matter to you. Because that's the other thing as well. It's a very good balance between my boss doesn't care about the work that I do, so I can just do any work because she's not going to care. Or, no, my boss actually really cares about my work, but she gives me the opportunity to do it. I just have to let her know afterwards what that looks like. So for me, in my position, what that looked like, as the middle manager, is on a weekly basis, on a Tuesday, at the same time every single Tuesday, I had a standing meeting with my line manager. And all I did was I updated her on all the things that I had done for the week, what is going on with my team, what metrics have we met or are we working towards, or KPIs, and any updates on staffing. So was there anything that we needed to do in terms of, the mental health? So somebody's been taking excessive mental health days, or like it was mainly more like a personnel update. Staffing update sounds as if I was talking about rostering, but no, like personnel updates. So, somebody's taken excessive mental health days, or this person I'm worried about, or this person had a fallout with that person, but this is how we mediated it. X, Y, and Z. So that was a standing weekly meeting, and that's it. She didn't come and check up on me any other time unless there was something else that needed to be done, but very rarely. So if your team really needs to come to you for everything, like they cannot like even press a button on a computer before asking your permission to do so, that's excessive, I know, but I'm trying to make a point, then that's micromanagement. Okay, please trust your team. Empower them to make decisions and take ownership of their work. The way you'll do that is by training them, mentoring them, coaching them. Let them make mistakes, because through those mistakes, they're going to see what's the consequences of those mistakes, and they're going to learn from it. I know it's hard because we don't want our team to make mistakes, especially in certain corporations. You can't afford for them to make mistakes. However, then just put them in an environment that they can make mistakes in. Put them on a project. Put them, even if it's a mock-up project, put them on that project so that they can learn autonomy, learn how to trust their own intuition and their own knowledge and skills and qualification that they've studied to be there. Okay? So yes, provide guidance, not control. Offer support and advice where needed. Okay? So guidance versus control. Okay? Guidance means that I'm going to equip you to do this thing. I'll show you, I'll equip you, and then you go and do it. Control means that I'm going to do everything and you're just going to look all the time. You're never going to have a chance to try. Or you're going to try, but I'm going to be looking over your shoulder every minute of the day. And then to, really combat micromanagement is celebrate those successes and recognize and reward their achievements to boost their morale, okay? So micromanagement, really, it's not something that needs to be done. It's actually very unnecessary, micromanagement. So, people have gotten degrees, they've got knowledge and experience to offer your company or your team. So they don't need to be micromanaged by you. What they need to do is to use their expertise to add value. And so then the final one is ignoring employee well-being. Okay. So I kind of a little bit touched on this again on point number 2, where I was talking about work-life balance, negative work-life balance. But I think this point is really important, so that's why I'm bringing it up again. So ignoring employee well-being. So the mistake that I see that people make is neglecting physical and mental health concerns. So, depends on which industry you're in. Like, let's say if you're in the nursing industry and there's some really big staff shortages. I mean, you can't afford to be without your nurses. They have to work. They have to do those shifts. And if you don't have those, then you're going to have to call in your casual workforce, or you're going to have to then rely on agency work, on the agency companies to provide you with nurses. And then that's a problem within itself as well, because then usually the nurses who work for those agency or those recruitment agency companies on a casual basis, they're not as committed to the patients, they're not committed to the hospital. Your casual workforce might be a little bit more committed, but they're not as committed as your full-time or your part-time staff. So I get it. I completely get that you don't want to let people take days, physical or mental health days, because you just can't afford it. However, in the long run, it's going to be more detrimental if you don't allow them to take those physical or mental health days off, and if you don't look after their physical and mental health well-being. Obviously, they're adults, they can look after themselves, but sometimes people need a bit of a push in the right direction. Okay, so my suggestion would be to promote some wellness programs at work, offer resources like yoga, meditation, or therapy. Now, be mindful that yoga can be misconstrued in our faith as something that's not correct. So I know a lot of people have got thoughts and feelings that yoga or meditation in particular comes from Buddhism. However, remember that in the Bible, it talks about meditating in the Word, okay? So if you're going to offer things like yoga, meditation, therapy, then just make sure that you feel right with that as well. I mean, not all of you work in a faith-based company, remember? So whether you feel right about it or not, sometimes things like yoga, meditation, or therapy, like massage therapy, for example, I organized once a year for my team to get corporate massages, for example. So, just make up your mind what you want to do there. There's quite a lot of things with wellness programs. But again, you don't have to organize everything. You can actually get your team to say, okay, let's do full wellness program. You can even create a wellness team. And they can come up with all the things. So, there's some suggestions there. If you want to go and read up a little bit more about yoga and meditation and thoughts and opinions on that, by all means. I'm not here to give my opinion on those sort of things, but I'm just saying that I know that some people do have those opinions, and I'm not condoning it and saying that you have to do that or you must. Some people do it. It's like Halloween. Some Christians celebrate Halloween. Some Christians feel very strongly about celebrating Halloween. But again, it's not my. I don't feel like I'm gonna give an opinion on that here. So encourage breaks. So encourage short breaks throughout the day to rest and recharge. So depending on what industry you're in, you have to take breaks. I know some in the education industry, or the early childhood education industry here in Australia, for example, people have to take a break after 5 hours. They're not allowed to pass 5 hours without taking a break, for example. So if people are saying, "Oh no, I don't need my break, I'll just work through," just remember they have to go on those breaks. In Australia, it's a law. If you don't take a break after 5 hours and let's say that person says, "I'm fine, I don't want to take a break, I'm just going to work through." Then that person gets injured on their 6th or 7th or 8th hour of work, then who's liable? Not the employee, the employer. So people have to understand these things, and they have to understand that I have to take a break, whether I want to or not. Okay? And then create a positive working environment. So we've talked a lot about that on the show as well. Foster a supportive and inclusive culture, and celebrating those wins. There's so many things that you can do to create a positive workplace culture or a positive workplace environment. I'd encourage you to nearly go and listen to every single episode of this show, because I like to talk about that. I love to talk about workplace culture, work environments, and leadership, and our important role that we have as leaders. And I truly believe that if you address these 5 key areas, that you can significantly reduce the risk of your team burning out, and that you can create a more positive and productive work environment where everyone, including yourself, is looked after. Okay, so I'd like to end the show by just saying thank you so much for being a listener. And I just want to pray that, if one of these 5 things resonated for you, that you'll go and sit at the feet of the Lord and say, "Lord, I'm struggling with this. I don't have time management skills. I don't know how to prioritize. I'm a bad role model to my team. Please help me. Show me what I need to do. Give me insight, knowledge, and the expertise to know what I need to do. I need you, Lord, and I pray that you just come and show me what to do." And then for every single listener listening, I pray that you will have an amazing rest of your day. I pray that you will feel God's hand of protection and love and just grace over your life. And I want to remind you all that you are worthy to be in your leadership position. God has called you into that leadership position because He knows that you can make a difference. Just please always remember that. Okay, I look forward to chatting with you next week about reviewing SOPs and policies and procedures, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Bye. Thanks so much for listening. If this podcast blessed you in some way, the number one way you can thank me is by leaving a review.
Your feedback means the world to me and lights me up every single time when I read it. And it makes me want to keep going. So please leave a review, and your review will also help other Christian women in leadership find the answers they are looking for. So whether you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, scroll down to the review section and leave that review. Then head over to womenoffaithinleadership.com and join our free Facebook community, and I look forward to engaging with you there.